You don't actually listen to what they're saying. You just imagine that they will end up doing whatever you think they're going to do, whatever you think is best for you. I think there's something very funny about this, by the way. Kamala Harris's support among Republicans almost doubles in the New York Times Siena poll. And you hope that this means that like Republicans in swing states are going to vote for her. That's not what this means at all. So like her support going from, I don't know, what is it, 9%? What is, up from 5% to 9% among Republicans who plan to vote for her does not mean that it's the Republicans in Pennsylvania that are saying that they're going to vote for her. This does not mean that Republicans in mother swing states are going to be voting for her. Okay? Republicans plan to back the Democratic candidate out of likely voters went from 5% up from 5% in the last New York Times Siena poll a month earlier. By contrast, just 3% of Democratic identifying voters say they will vote for Donald Trump. The poll came with a 2.4 margin of error. Notably, Harris could win the popular vote and still lose to Trump thanks to the Electoral College. From Added, I do think we're living through the moment when the parties changed who their voters are. We're seeing a certain type of voter with a lot to lose migrating into the Democratic coalition because it offers stability, and a certain kind of voter with less to lose and more alienation migrating out of the Democratic coalition because they don't feel attached enough to the society and are excited by the Republican promise to take more risks with America. I think it's like a ship that's sinking, okay? And these guys are worried about plugging one of the smallest holes possible. You're taking Democratic voters, like regular Democratic constituencies, for granted in an even worse way than the Joe Biden re-election campaign did. And it's even more dangerous because Kamala Harris is a black woman. So the assumption that just by being a black woman, you're going to take for granted a lot of young voters, a lot of black and brown voters across the board is not a good strategy. Okay? Kamala Harris has to make up for her lack of charisma with sound policies that actually help people. Just be like, this is where people are hurting. This is how I'm going to help them. She's doing neither. She doesn't have the charisma to push a, regular old boring neoliberal campaign. Neither did Hillary Clinton, mind you. And she also doesn't even have good policies that she can point to be like, this is what I'm going to do to help Americans that are suffering. Kamala has charisma. It's called being hot as I mean, she is. She's attractive, but that's not enough. She comes across like a robot every time she says the exact same words over and over again. She literally force feeds the talking point into whatever question. It's like her brain hears like keywords. It's like a AI. Her brain hears keywords and goes, Donald Trump does not care about the problem every time. They could be like, ma'am, Madam Vice President, we were asking about the United Fruit Workers Union or something. You know what I mean? Like, why are you, what? What are your thoughts on this? 47% of people in recent polls say Harris is too liberal progressive, and that includes 49% of independents. Only 9% say not progressive enough. How could she package progressive policy in a way to avoid this perception? Sorry, last time I'm going to try to ask. Great question. The answer is you're not going to like it. But the answer is Americans are stupid. Okay? That's it. It's all about messaging. And they did a very good job by not saying that they are going to institute price caps, but instead they're going to tackle price gougers. They're going to fight price gougers in the grocery sector. Okay? That is one of her most popular policies thus far. It polls at 83%, has an 83% approval rating. That is the most significant, one of the most radical things that an American presidential candidate has put forward. They messaged that correctly. They did a great job with that messaging. And regardless of how much the Republican Party tried to tackle it by saying this is vuvuzela, this is communism, this is, all this, it still doesn't change that reality. Okay? Yeah. Net support for federal law limiting how much companies can raise the price of food and groceries, plus 15%. A federal law establishing price control in food and groceries, minus 10%. I try to tell you guys this all the time. It is simply about recognizing the harm that people are experiencing and then saying, we're going to help you. That's it. They said the same thing about Tim Walz. Tim Walz's policies, for example, are considered radical. Paid family leave, how dare you? Expanding the social safety nets in significant ways is considered unimaginably progressive in this country. American voters vote for instituting seizing the means of production for the working class if it's not associated with the Democratic Party, if it's a faceless, lifeless ballot measure. Okay? Never forget that. On principle, you can move the needle by referendum on unimaginably progressive ballot measures. That's precisely the reason why so many Republicans refuse to expand Medicaid coverage in red states. And people had to fight tooth and nail for it on the ground to expand Medicaid through ballot measures. Okay? Just because Americans also stupidly think like Kamala Harris is too liberal does not change the reality that if she was actively communicating desirable policies that will help solve some of the issues that Americans are facing, okay, and just kept repeating it and over again. And whenever people said this is too radical, this is too progressive, she said, what is radical or progressive about helping Americans? I think you're the radical one for consistently fighting tooth and nail to stop any kind of measure that helps American citizens. You're the radical one. You never do this for the wealthy. That would immediately deflate any kind of counter. So stop pointing to dumbass polls like that to be like, oh, Americans fancy her to be too radical. Americans don't know anything. Okay, they're stupid. Do you get it? I agree. Thanks for that. It kind of makes me think of what's happening in Nebraska with their independent candidate. There are so many examples. There are so many examples of shit that Americans are on board with, as long as you don't say this is a progressive socialist policy. That's it. Yeah, a huge part of the too liberal characterization is just race and gender, which is pretty funny because she doesn't even make an effort to say anything about race or gender. The issue is she's a black woman. That's where it comes from as well. You're absolutely correct on this. Like 100%. They go, oh, Kamala Harris is a black woman. She's too liberal. It's a cycle of neglect leading to poor education, which leads to being stupid and ignorant, which allows neglect to fester. Yes. Why did Hillary ever think people would vote for her? Because she's a woman, people hate women. Because she's a white woman in like elite liberal circles where there's a lot of pandering to that sort of thing, like white feminism festers in these environments, and it led her to have a false sense of security and comfort in that position. But Kamala Harris is black, okay? And you can tell she's black by the fact that she never brings up the fact that she's a black woman. Because black people know it doesn't work that way. You can't just be like, I'm black, vote for me, your way into office. One other thing, how does Trump get away with only 32% saying he's too conservative? That's a bit shocking to me. He portrayed himself as a centrist the first time. It's because Trump is charismatic. Not charismatic to us, but charismatic to a lot of dumbasses. And there's a lot of them, even in the Democratic Party, even in the independent side of things. And when you consider someone to be charismatic, you make up policies for them in your mind. You don't actually listen to what they're saying. You just imagine that they will end up doing whatever you think they're going to do, whatever you think is best for you. Like they just cope. They like him. They like his other policies. So they just make up shit.